The morning mist hung thick and heavy over the frozen French countryside. November 19th, 1944. Outside the small town of Borgaltroff, a German anti-tank gunner crouched behind his weapon. His breath formed white clouds in the bitter air. Through his optical sight, he watched American Sherman tanks approaching through the gray dawn. This gunner had been fighting these same American tankers for 3 long days. Something disturbed him deeply. Everything his Nazi instructors had drilled into his head was proving wrong. The lead Sherman tank limped forward despite visible damage. Black smoke poured from its engine compartment. Multiple hits had scarred its armor plating, yet still, it advanced. The gunner adjusted his sight. Through the magnified optics, he could see the tank commander clearly. The figure was unmistakably a black soldier. The man stood exposed in the turret hatch. Enemy fire whistled around him. Still, he operated the heavy machine gun mounted on top. His movements showed no fear, no hesitation. This black soldier was Staff Sergeant Reuben Rivers. The German gunner would never learn that name. Not until decades passed. Not until military historians pieced together this brutal encounter. Rivers had been severely wounded. His leg was slashed down to the bone. White medics had offered him morphine injections. He refused them all. Evacuation orders came down. He ignored them completely. Instead, he climbed into another tank. He took command. He advanced with his company into the next day's fighting. For 3 full days, Rivers had continued the battle. His wound festered with gangrene. Any normal soldier would have collapsed. The infection should have killed him. The pain should have broken him. Instead, he fought on. The German gunner watched those final moments. Rivers' tank moved into his crosshairs. The end came swiftly. But what haunted the gunner forever wasn't the violence itself. It was how completely this encounter shattered everything he believed. These supposedly inferior soldiers displayed courage beyond anything he had witnessed. 5 years of war had shown him nothing like this. The 761st Tank Battalion's entry into World War II meant far more than another American unit joining the fight. 2 completely opposed worldviews were about to collide head-on. Nazi racial ideology would meet its total refutation on the battlefield. The battalion's motto read, "Come out fighting." From their very first engagement, they lived up to those words. The small Belgian town of Morville-l'Evêque saw their combat debut in November 1944. Heavy fighting would continue right through to war's end. Their fight carried double meaning. German forces preparing to face them had no idea what was coming. Among these enemy units were soldiers indoctrinated from childhood. Racial superiority formed the core of their beliefs. Wehrmacht training materials stated specific claims. Black soldiers could not operate complex machinery. They lacked courage completely. Combat would send them fleeing immediately. These weren't casual prejudices floating around. These were fundamental beliefs that shaped German military doctrine. These assumptions guided their tactical planning. The 761st would spend 183 consecutive days in combat. Every single assumption would prove catastrophically wrong. March 15, 1942, saw the 761st Tank Battalion officially constituted. April 1, 1942, brought activation at Camp Claiborne, Louisiana. The activation didn't spring from progressive military thinking. Internal War Department documents called it political necessity to maintain Negro morale. The battalion's path to combat differed completely from white units. The men of the 761st trained for almost 2 full years. They knew white units deployed overseas after much shorter training periods. White armored battalions typically received 12 to 16 weeks of preparation. The 761st would train for over 24 months. They mastered every aspect of armored warfare. They understood the stakes perfectly. Any mistake would reflect not on the individual. It would condemn their entire race. Lieutenant Colonel Paul L. Bates commanded the battalion. He was white. His career was considered finished for accepting this position. Military colleagues called it professional suicide. But Bates had served in World War I. He had watched French colonial troops fight with remarkable distinction. More importantly, he judged men by their abilities. Color meant nothing to him. After 2 years of training, Bates made his assessment. The 761st was the best-trained tank battalion in the entire United States Army. Among the men who would prove him right was Staff Sergeant Reuben Rivers. Rivers came from Hottalka, Oklahoma. He stood 6 feet 2 inches tall. Farm life had shaped his youth. Bates called it an intuitive understanding of terrain and tactics. Warren G. H. Creasy would earn the nickname Iron Man. His extraordinary combat endurance became legendary. The battalion's most famous member would never see combat. First Lieutenant Jack Roosevelt Robinson served with the 761st. This athlete would become one of baseball's greatest players. His chance for combat ended at Fort Hood, Texas. July 1944 brought the incident. Robinson refused to move to the back of a segregated military bus. Court-martial proceedings followed. June 9, 1944 brought overseas movement orders for the 761st Tank Battalion. This came 3 days after D-Day landings in Normandy. The British trooper Esperance Bay carried them across the Atlantic. September 8, 1944 saw their arrival in England. A brief English deployment followed. October 10, 1944 brought them to France via Omaha Beach. Immediate attachment to General George S. Patton's Third Army followed. Patton's initial skepticism about black tankers was well documented. Letters to his wife revealed his doubts. He questioned their ability to think fast enough for armored warfare. Yet October 28, 1944 brought his famous speech to the battalion. His words rang across the formation. "Men, you're the first Negro tankers to ever fight in the American Army. I would never have asked for you if you weren't good. I have nothing but the best in my army. I don't care what color you are as long as you go up there and kill those Kraut sons of bitches. Everyone has their eyes on you and is expecting great things from you." November 7, 1944, finally gave the Black Panthers their chance. They attacked the German-held town of Morville-Levick. The 26th Infantry Division needed their support. German defenders waited confidently. Wehrmacht infantry mixed with anti-tank units. They expected easy victory against America's supposedly inferior troops. The battle lasted 4 brutal hours. Inside the town, King's lead tank took a direct hit. A German Panzerfaust rocket destroyed it completely. 2 crew members suffered wounds. Their comrades dragged them to safety behind the burning tank hull. Then they went hunting. The soldier with the Panzerfaust died quickly. German after-action reports discovered in military archives noted something unexpected. The attacking tank unit showed exceptional tactical proficiency. German commanders had expected panic when the first tank exploded. Instead, the 761st executed coordinated assault tactics. They systematically eliminated German defensive positions one by one. Staff Sergeant Reuben Rivers encountered a German roadblock. The obstacle forced his tank to halt completely. Heavy enemy small arms fire raked his position. Bullets sparked off his tank's armor. Rivers leaped out anyway. Under continuous fire, he attached a cable from his Sherman to the roadblock. He remounted quickly. His tank pulled the obstacle clear off the road. The tank column resumed its advance. The town fell to American forces. Rivers received the Silver Star for this action. It was the first of many decorations the battalion would earn. November 1944 saw the 761st in constant combat operations. The unit endured 183 days of continuous operational employment. November alone brought severe casualties. 24 men killed in action, 81 wounded, 44 non-battle losses. The unit lost 14 tanks evacuated from combat. Another 20 suffered battle damage. These dry statistics couldn't capture what German forces were learning. The black tankers they expected to flee at first contact were maintaining operational tempo. Their performance exceeded most white American units. Typical tank battalions rotated to rear areas after 10 to 14 days of combat. The 761st remained on the front lines continuously. German intelligence reports from this period show growing confusion. Documents housed in the Bundesarchiv Militärarchiv reveal their bewilderment. One report from the 11th Panzer Division noted, "Enemy tank unit operating in Sector 7 displays exceptional maintenance of vehicles and aggressive tactics inconsistent with intelligence assessments." The most dramatic demonstration of 761st determination came during the assault on Gebling. November 16, 1944, saw the advance toward this French town. Staff Sergeant Rivers' tank hit a mine at a railroad crossing. The explosion tore through the tank's hull. Rivers suffered severe wounds. His legs were slashed down to the bone. Medics offered morphine injections. He declined them all. Evacuation orders came down. He refused to comply. Instead, he took command of another tank. He advanced with his company into Gebling the next day. Captain David Williams commanded Rivers' company. He repeatedly ordered the wounded sergeant to evacuate. Rivers' response was documented in Williams' official report. "Captain, you know better than that. This is going to be tough. Another 2 days won't make any difference." A medic examined Rivers' swollen and infected leg. He looked up in alarm. "Listen, he's got gangrene," he shouted. Williams only had time to say Reuben before German guns zeroed in again. Incoming artillery forced the Americans to take cover immediately. November 19, 1944, brought the final moment. Dawn broke gray and cold. Company A's tanks advanced toward Bugaltov, their next objective. Enemy fire stopped them completely. Captain David J. Williams ordered his tanks to withdraw and take cover immediately. Staff Sergeant Rivers radioed a different message. He had spotted the German anti-tank positions. "I see him. We'll fight him." Rivers, joined by another Company A tank, opened fire on enemy positions. He provided covering fire as Company A withdrew to safety. German return fire found his tank. The hit killed Rivers instantly and wounded his remaining crew members. Captain Williams immediately recommended Rivers for the Medal of Honor. The recommendation would wait 52 years for action. December 16, 1944, brought the Wehrmacht's last major offensive. Operation Watch on the Rhine began. Americans knew it as the Battle of the Bulge. The 761st received attachment to the 87th Infantry Division. They were thrown into desperate fighting to stop the German breakthrough. The battalion faced some of Germany's best remaining units. Elements of the Führer-Begleit Brigade opposed them. This elite formation had expanded from Hitler's personal escort battalion. Fighting around Tillet, Belgium, proved particularly brutal. Replacements were hard to come by. Many new men assigned to join the Black Panthers were raw and untrained. Others were rejects from other units, totally unfit for duty. Despite inadequate replacements, the 761st continued fighting. The fighting was savage and unrelenting. The 761st Tank Battalion's Shermans and 87th Division Infantry struggled against bitter resistance every step forward. German forces included Tiger tanks, whose 88 mm guns could destroy Shermans at ranges where American 75 mm guns couldn't penetrate Tiger armor. The 761st developed tactics to compensate for this disadvantage. They used superior mobility to flank the heavier German tanks. Their mechanical reliability kept more vehicles in action than German units could manage. One tanker, Sergeant Frank C. Cochran, shouted over the radio during heavy fighting, "They've hit me 3 times, but I'm still giving them hell." By January 9, 1945, Tillet was in American hands. The 761st had helped stop the German offensive completely. The victory came at heavy cost in men and equipment. February and March 1945 saw the 761st participating in the assault on the Siegfried Line. Germany's last major fortification system awaited them. The battalion received attachment to the 103rd Infantry Division for the assault. Within days, the Siegfried Line was broken. Enemy troops came forward to surrender in increasingly large numbers. By March 23rd, the Black Panthers had destroyed hundreds of enemy vehicles and heavy weapons. They inflicted 4,000 casualties on German forces. They captured nearly as many prisoners. Combat here differed from France and Belgium. Now they fought on German soil. Increasingly desperate resistance came from Wehrmacht and Volkssturm units, defending their homeland. German soldiers began surrendering in larger numbers. Many specifically asked about the black tankers they had heard about. Prisoners were terrified to be captured by black soldiers. Their own propaganda convinced them to expect no mercy from such savages. African Americans of the 761st learned not to rise out of their tank hatches until Germans came close. Otherwise, surrendering troops would see their black skin, howl in terror, and run away. This fear, based entirely on Nazi propaganda, proved completely unfounded. The 761st treated prisoners according to Geneva Convention protocols. They often shared their own rations with captured Germans. Professional conduct replaced the savagery their enemies expected. As the 761st crossed into Germany proper in March 1945, they encountered scenes revealing the true nature of the regime they fought. German civilians, conditioned by years of racial propaganda, were terrified of black soldiers. Many fled rather than remain in areas occupied by the 761st. The battalion maintained strict discipline throughout. No reprisals against civilians occurred. No looting took place. No revenge attacks happened, despite the racial hatred they knew these people had been taught. This professional conduct confused German civilians completely. They expected racial inferiors to behave like the savages depicted in Nazi propaganda. Instead, they found disciplined soldiers who treated them fairly. Tank battles continued as the 761st pushed deeper into Germany. They faced Panthers, Tigers, and desperate resistance from SS units. Warren G. H. Creasy had earned his Iron Man nickname through extraordinary endurance. He was particularly notable during this period. Often he would dismount his tank at night with an M1 Garand rifle. Personal reconnaissance missions became his specialty. He would scout enemy positions alone in complete darkness. One of the most profound moments in the 761st's combat history came on May 4th to 5th, 1945. A grimmer encounter took place on May 2nd when the tankers liberated Gunskirchen concentration camp in Austria. They discovered some 15,000 Hungarian Jews near death from starvation. The scene that greeted the black tankers defied any description. Thousands of skeletal figures filled the camp. Many couldn't stand upright. The SS guards had fled days earlier. They left the prisoners to die slowly. Technician 5th grade Johnny Stevens later recalled the moment. Here were people who looked like skeletons, trying to smile, trying to wave. Some of them were crying. We gave them everything we had. Our rations, our chocolate, everything. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. Nazi Germany's supposed racial inferiors were liberating the victims of racial hatred. One woman liberated by the unit was 17-year-old Sonia Schreiber-Weiss. She described the soldier who saved her in the poem The Black Messiah. The words read, "A black GI stood by the door. I never saw a black before. He'll set me free before I die, I thought. He must be the Messiah." By the end of April 1945, the 761st would be among the first U.S. battalions to meet Soviet forces. The meeting occurred at Steyr, Austria, in early May 1945. Sources vary between April 26th and May 5th to 6th. Tanker Leonard Smith received the shock of his life. A stout Russian woman tanker approached him shouting, "America! America! America!" She wrapped him in a tight hug until he could hardly breathe. The Soviet forces, including female tank crews, showed no surprise at seeing black American tankers. For them, what mattered was simple. These were fellow soldiers who had survived the brutal fight against Nazi Germany. Race meant nothing compared to shared sacrifice. The 761st Tank Battalion's combat record speaks for itself with stark numbers. 183 consecutive days of combat from November 7, 1944 to May 6, 1945. 6 countries traversed including France, Belgium, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Germany, and Austria. 4 major campaigns fought: northern France, Rhineland, Ardennes, Alsace, and Central Europe. Casualties inflicted numbered approximately 4,000 German casualties, according to National World War II museum records. German equipment destroyed included hundreds of vehicles, 31 pillboxes, 49 machine gun emplacements, and 29 anti-tank guns captured. Unit casualties approached nearly 50% casualty rate. Initial strength numbered 36 officers, 30 black and 6 white, plus 676 enlisted men. 71 tanks were lost in total. Awards included 1 Medal of Honor posthumously awarded to Reuben Rivers in 1997. 70 Silver Stars were earned. Approximately 246 to 300 Bronze Stars were awarded. Purple Hearts numbered in the hundreds. While specific Wehrmacht documents mentioning the 761st by designation remain limited, German reactions to Black American troops are well documented in military archives and prisoner interrogations. One surrendering German officer asked, "How many Negro Panzer divisions are there?" When told there was only 1 battalion, he refused to believe it. The continuous presence of the 761st over 183 days had created the impression of a much larger force. German prisoners repeatedly expressed surprise at the combat effectiveness of black troops. Interrogation reports from 1945, now housed in the U.S. National Archives, show German soldiers struggling to reconcile what they witnessed with what they had been taught about racial superiority. One captured Wehrmacht sergeant told interrogators a revealing truth. "We were told the Negroes would run at the first shot. Instead, they kept coming even when we knocked out their tanks. This was not what we expected." The war in Europe ended on May 8, 1945. The 761st's fight was far from over. Like their white comrades, African-American tankers struggled with memories. Post-traumatic stress affected many. Unlike white soldiers, however, black soldiers dealt with segregation. The often savage racial prejudice characteristic of this period in American history awaited their return. Texas Native Staff Sergeant Floyd Dade Jr. described the contradictions for black soldiers returning to the United States. In an oral history, he said, "We didn't have equal rights. Democracy was against us." The men who had destroyed German tanks and liberated concentration camps returned to an America where they couldn't eat in many restaurants. They had to sit in the back of buses. They faced violent racism daily. German prisoners of war held in the United States were often treated better than the black soldiers who had captured them. For 33 years, the 761st Tank Battalion's achievements went officially unrecognized at the unit level. Individual medals were awarded promptly. The Presidential Unit citation that white battalions received immediately was denied to them. Political considerations outweighed military merit. It wasn't until January 24, 1978, that President Jimmy Carter awarded the Presidential Unit citation to the 761st Tank Battalion. Recognition came more than 3 decades late, but it finally came. The official citation spoke of remarkable achievements. It detailed extraordinary gallantry displayed by the 760th Tank Battalion. Courage beyond measure had been demonstrated. Professionalism under fire had marked their service. High spirits had carried them through impossible odds. Difficult operations had been completed successfully. Hazardous missions had become their specialty. Recognition finally arrived decades later. 7 battalion members received America's highest honor. The Medal of Honor came to Staff Sergeant Reuben Rivers posthumously. January 12, 1997 marked a historic ceremony. Over 50 years had passed since Rivers' heroic sacrifice. President Clinton addressed the gathering that day. His words carried weight and significance. No African American had received this honor for World War II service. A gap in history needed filling. Heroes who loved peace had adapted to war. The tribute they deserved was finally theirs. General Patton underwent a remarkable transformation during this period. His initial doubts about black soldiers had been well documented. Skepticism had marked his early assessments. The 761st would change his perspective completely. Their service record spoke louder than any prejudice. The Battle of the Bulge brought unexpected challenges. German soldiers had raided American supply warehouses. Enemy troops disguised themselves as friendly forces. Checkpoint security became a critical concern. American soldiers faced potential ambush at every turn. Patton devised an innovative solution to this problem. Black soldiers would guard the vital checkpoints. The 761st received specific orders for this mission. Any white soldiers acting suspiciously would be shot. This decision demonstrated remarkable trust from the general. The security of his entire army rested in their hands. These were the same soldiers he had once questioned. Doubts about their tactical thinking had evaporated. Quick decision-making under pressure became their strength. Armored warfare demanded split-second choices. War's end brought numerous commendations for the 761st. Patton personally recommended them for recognition. His military assessment had become crystal clear. Personal racial views remained complicated and troubling. Professional evaluation showed no such confusion. The battalion ranked among his finest units. Combat performance had erased previous doubts. Excellence under fire had proven their worth. Leadership qualities had emerged throughout their ranks. Extended training became their unexpected advantage. Racism had kept them stateside for nearly 2 years. Standard training lasted only a few months typically. White units deployed with minimal preparation time. The 761st watched and waited while others shipped overseas. Consciousness of this disparity motivated intensive preparation. Every extra month meant additional skill development. Tank operation became second nature to these men. Maintenance procedures were memorized completely. Unit cohesion reached extraordinary levels through extended time together. Lieutenant Colonel Paul Bates testified to this advantage later. The racist delay had accidentally created excellence. Extended preparation time had forged the best-trained tank battalion. Sherman tanks responded to their touch like precision instruments. Impossible maneuvers became routine operations. Warren Creasy earned the nickname Iron Man, honestly. Multiple wounds never stopped his fighting spirit. German equipment destruction followed in his wake. Survival through the entire war seemed miraculous given his aggressive tactics. One particular engagement showcased his determination perfectly. German fire knocked out his Sherman tank completely. Withdrawal would have been the sensible option. Instead, he commandeered a half-trax machine gun. The .50 caliber weapon provided covering fire for his crew. His men escaped while he held the position. The German emplacement was destroyed in the process. Dangerous assignments became his specialty by choice. Reconnaissance missions behind enemy lines were volunteered for regularly. Infantry support through the most hazardous terrain never fazed him. War's end brought different challenges for Creasy. Survival didn't guarantee easy adjustment to peace. What we now recognize as PTSD haunted many veterans. Speaking about combat experiences proved difficult for most. The 1978 Presidential Unit Citation finally brought proper recognition. German forces faced unexpected challenges from the 761st. Nazi propaganda had insisted on black mechanical incompetence. Complex machinery supposedly exceeded their capabilities entirely. Instead, the battalion maintained exceptional operational readiness rates. Third Army statistics showed their superiority consistently. Extended training contributed to this mechanical excellence significantly. Dedication from specialists like William Harvey made the difference. Engine problems could be diagnosed by sound alone. His expertise kept tanks running under impossible conditions. Maintenance crews worked through endless nights frequently. Enemy fire couldn't stop their repair efforts. German tanks, thought permanently destroyed, reappeared mysteriously. Days later, they rolled into battle, fully operational. Bewilderment filled German after-action reports repeatedly. The 761st's maintenance capabilities exceeded veteran Wehrmacht standards. Combat conditions that stopped other units meant nothing. Their vehicles stayed operational when others failed completely. Superior German tanks created tactical challenges constantly. Tigers and Panthers outgunned Sherman tanks significantly. Frontal armor couldn't be penetrated by 75mm guns. Innovative tactics became essential for survival and success. The 761st perfected maneuvers they called cat hunting. One Sherman would serve as deliberate bait. Enemy fire would reveal German positions clearly. Two flanking tanks raced to advantageous positions simultaneously. Thinner side armor became the primary target. Rear shots offered even better penetration possibilities. Extraordinary coordination was required for success. Courage beyond measure marked every mission. The bait tank faced almost certain destruction. These innovative tactics spread throughout American armored forces. Other units studied and adopted their methods. Combat innovations improved overall armored doctrine significantly. The European theater benefited from their tactical developments. Bastogne relief operations showcased their crucial role. The 101st Airborne Division faced complete encirclement. Patton's famous relief effort is well documented historically. The 761st's contribution often gets overlooked unfairly. Winter conditions tested human endurance severely. Temperatures dropped to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. German lines required breakthrough under impossible circumstances. Regular Wehrmacht units defended desperately alongside SS troops. The 101st Airborne watched anxiously from their surrounded positions. Supplies had dwindled to almost nothing. Medical care was running critically short. Ammunition reserves approached dangerous levels rapidly. Sherman tanks broke through German defensive lines finally. The 761st's arrival meant salvation for the paratroopers. One survivor recalled the emotional moment clearly. Skin color meant absolutely nothing in that instant. Those tanks represented the most beautiful sight imaginable. Combat leadership emerged throughout the battalion ranks consistently. Captain Erwin McHenry demonstrated tactical brilliance repeatedly. Captain John Long earned respect through competent command decisions. Lieutenant Charles Barber showed innovation under the most intense fire. These black officers commanded through earned respect entirely. Formal military hierarchy meant less than demonstrated competence. Combat effectiveness spoke louder than any regulation manual. Tactical decisions made under fire proved their capabilities. Captain David Williams commanded Company A with distinction. Medal of Honor recommendations flowed from his unit regularly. Most were downgraded due to systematic racial prejudice. Proper recognition came decades later, unfortunately. His men deserved immediate acknowledgement for their heroism. Infantry cooperation became a hallmark of 761st operations. Initial prejudice from white units faded quickly. Combat performance earned genuine respect from fellow soldiers. The assault on Klimbach, France demonstrated this transformation. White infantry units specifically requested their tank support. Previous engagements had proven their exceptional effectiveness clearly. Close support missions were accepted regardless of risk. Infantry lives were saved countless times through their courage. One infantry sergeant wrote home about their heroism. The colored tank boys had saved his unit repeatedly. They drove directly into German fire deliberately. Cover for advancing infantry was provided without hesitation. Homefront opinions meant nothing in combat situations. These men were genuine heroes in his assessment. Their courage spoke louder than any prejudice back home. Ammunition consumption reflected their aggressive combat style perfectly. Over 300 tons were fired during their deployment. This represented extraordinary usage for a single battalion. Wasteful shooting was never the explanation for these numbers. Sustained accurate fire demonstrated their extensive training clearly. German reports noted exceptional American tank gunnery regularly. Sectors where the 761st operated showed consistently superior marksmanship. Their training advantage translated directly into combat effectiveness. Casualty replacement created unique problems for the segregated army. Limited numbers of trained black tank crew members existed. Many new assignments came from other units' rejects. Raw recruits arrived with minimal training frequently. Experienced crew members couldn't rotate out for rest. Exhausted men continued fighting without relief options. No qualified replacements were available for most positions. This contributed to both extraordinary heroism and high casualty rates. German propaganda faced serious challenges from 761st combat performance. Soldiers who fought them couldn't reconcile experience with racial theory. Wehrmacht morale reports noted increasing skepticism about official ideology. Troops were asking difficult questions about racial propaganda. If racial theories were accurate, why were they losing? Inferior races were supposed to flee from combat. Instead, these black soldiers fought with exceptional skill and determination. This cognitive dissonance spread throughout German units rapidly. Fighting spirit collapsed in many units during the war's final months. Official ideology couldn't explain battlefield realities anymore. The 761st had demolished Nazi racial theories through undeniable combat excellence. Training in the American South brought additional challenges. Jim Crow conditions made daily life difficult. Kentucky, Louisiana, and Texas installations housed most black units. Before civil rights advances of the 1960s, harsh treatment was standard. Camp Hood, Texas, presented constant racial harassment problems. Local businesses refused service to black soldiers regularly. Military transportation remained completely segregated always. Battalion housing was located in the worst base areas. Sewage treatment plant proximity made living conditions unpleasant. Yet this adversity forged extraordinary unit cohesion. The men understood they were fighting two separate wars. Germans represented one enemy, while racism represented another. Dual purpose gave them determination German forces couldn't understand. This motivation proved impossible to overcome through normal military means. Their fighting spirit drew from sources deeper than patriotism alone. Jackie Robinson's story illustrates the battalion's character perfectly. The future baseball legend served as first lieutenant initially. A white bus driver ordered him to the back. Robinson's refusal led to immediate arrest and charges. Battalion Commander Lieutenant Colonel Paul Bates refused court-martial proceedings. The post commander transferred Robinson to another unit instead. The 758th Tank Battalion's commander signed the insubordination charges willingly. Robinson faced court-martial but was acquitted completely. Legal proceedings meant missing the European deployment entirely. Honorable discharge came in November 1944. Baseball's color barrier would fall in 1947. November 10, 2005, brought long overdue recognition to Fort Hood. A monument to the 761st Tank Battalion was finally unveiled. 4 black granite tablets surrounded a life-size marble sculpture. The fighter knelt atop a black granite pedestal. Tank engravings decorated the front surface clearly. A panther image marked the back appropriately. The dedication drew surviving veterans and their families. Military officials attended to pay proper respects. The keynote speaker acknowledged their dual victory. Nazi Germany's defeat was only part of their achievement. The principle that all Americans could serve with distinction mattered equally. Race should never determine military capability or opportunity. Unexpected validation came from former German enemies. American military historians interviewed Wehrmacht veterans during the 1990s. Tank warfare discussions consistently mentioned exceptional American units. Black tankers were described repeatedly with grudging respect. Particular ferocity and skill marked their combat performance. These former enemies had no reason for false praise, yet they consistently identified the 761st as superior opponents. One German tank commander spoke with obvious respect. They fought like devils, he admitted honestly. Their country treated them as inferior citizens. Yet they fought harder than any other American unit. Perhaps having something to prove made the difference. Human cost measured the true price of their achievements. Nearly 50% casualties marked their service record. Families received telegrams about sons, husbands, and fathers. These men died fighting for a country denying full citizenship. Survivors rarely expressed bitterness about this contradiction. Leonard Smith became a New York City transit officer after the war. His 1995 interview revealed remarkable perspective about their service. They fought for America's potential, not its current reality. Historical recognition came slowly and incompletely for decades. History books minimized or ignored black combat achievements. Support units received mention occasionally, while combat units disappeared. The 761st story remained largely unknown outside black communities. Change began during the 1970s civil rights movement. Recovering black history became a priority for many scholars. The 1978 Presidential Unit Citation brought national attention finally. The 1997 Medal of Honor ceremony increased awareness significantly. Today, the 761st Tank Battalion receives proper recognition. The U.S. Army Armor School teaches their story. Military academies study their innovative tactics. Museums honor their contributions to victory. Their relevance continues in modern times clearly. Prejudice and discrimination waste human potential consistently. The Army's reluctance to use black soldiers nearly cost them. One of their best tank battalions almost remained unused. Excellence cannot be suppressed by prejudice ultimately. Discrimination from their own country and enemy hatred couldn't stop them. Skill, courage, and determination produced extraordinary achievements. Their story challenges modern prejudices and preconceptions. Nazi Germany's military proficiency was historically exceptional. Yet their racial assumptions proved catastrophically wrong. What assumptions do we make today that might be equally false? Their combat record became powerful evidence for military integration. President Truman signed Executive Order 9981 in 1948. Armed Forces desegregation cited units like the 761st specifically. Combat achievements proved segregation weakened military effectiveness clearly. Korean War integrated units performed exceptionally well later. Competence and courage know no racial boundaries whatsoever. Many 761st veterans served as integration advisors. Their unique experience provided valuable lessons for the process. Post-war experiences varied dramatically among individual veterans. E.G. McConnell used the GI Bill for college education. Educational opportunities had been impossible before military service. Others faced continued discrimination in employment and housing. Warren Creasy struggled with combat fatigue for years afterward. Like many veterans, he rarely discussed combat experiences. The 1978 Presidential Unit Citation finally revealed the full extent. Many families learned about their relatives' heroism then. Various sources helped piece together their complete story. Official Army records provided basic documentation. German military archives offered enemy perspectives. Personal letters and diaries added intimate details. Oral histories collected decades later filled remaining gaps. Each source added details to their extraordinary service picture. Impossible circumstances had produced remarkable achievements consistently. The U.S. Army's 1950s official history barely mentioned them. Independent historians and veterans preserved their story. The National Archives now holds extensive battalion records. Researchers and the public can access this documentation freely. Gunskirchen concentration camp liberation is commemorated at Yad Vashem. Israel's official Holocaust memorial honors their humanity. Survivors and descendants maintain connections with veteran families. These relationships continue across multiple generations. The Austrian government invited surviving members for 2015 ceremonies. The 70th anniversary of war's end deserved proper recognition. They were honored as liberators and humanitarian examples. Humanity had been shown amid inhuman circumstances. German tigers and panthers never expected the Black Panthers. Nazi racial ideology assured them black soldiers couldn't operate tanks. Courage was supposedly lacking in inferior races. First contact would produce immediate flight, they believed. Instead, they encountered men with superior training and determination. Harder fighting came from unexpected sources. More endurance was shown than any other American unit. The 761st fought for 183 consecutive days without relief. Nazi racial ideology crumbled under their combat excellence. Undeniable achievements demolished false theories completely. Germany's defeat came partly through their exceptional service. 7 silver stars marked their official recognition finally. 246 Purple Hearts showed their sacrifice. 1 Congressional Medal of Honor acknowledged supreme heroism. These decorations hint at their full heroic story. Racial prejudice delayed many awards for decades. The full extent of their heroism remained hidden. Every Sherman tank carried more than ammunition into battle. The weight of representation rested on their shoulders. Burden of proof marked every combat mission. Millions of Black Americans watched their performance. Courage and competence needed demonstration beyond any doubt. Every German position destroyed struck multiple blows. Wehrmacht positions faced superior American determination. Racial prejudices of 2 nations faced challenge simultaneously. Their enemies and their own country learned valuable lessons. German forces learned that racial assumptions were wrong. Black soldiers they considered subhuman proved extraordinary. Inferior troops demonstrated superior courage consistently. Complex machinery was mastered at the highest levels. The 761st Tank Battalion's greatest victory transcended military achievements. Towns were captured and enemy tanks destroyed successfully. But proving excellence knows no racial boundaries mattered more. Training determination and character determined success. They were the Black Panthers who came out fighting. For 183 days without relief, they never stopped. Easy prey was expected by German tigers. Instead, the Black Panthers taught them everything about race was wrong. Their legacy lives on beyond military history books. The ongoing struggle for equality and recognition continues. Their sacrifice helped advance this crucial cause significantly. German tigers expected weakness, but found unstoppable strength instead.